super excited to talk today about with real world examples of democratizing UX research, which everyone talks about democratization for such a long time, but there actually aren't that many instances of it working at any reasonable scale. And so at Flight Centre, they've got 3,000 employees and just two full-time researchers, if I'm not mistaken. And Dr. Will Yanko has built this really thriving research culture looking to empower non-researchers, right, and make them successful, to confidently engage with customers, to better understand them, to make better product design, marketing decisions, you name it. And so thanks for coming. Let's rip in. Will, you've got 10 years experience in the research space, working in some pretty large-scale research-driven companies, and now Flight Centre, specifically in the travel group leisure, is that right? Division. Yep. And so maybe you could, I guess, tell us more about your background and I guess what led you to want to even jump into this world of democratization.
Oh wow, man. We need a couple of hours for that. I used to be a computer scientist, used to work as a software engineer, had a degree in computer science, got sick of it, and then studied music. I know, pretty different.
Cool.
Hey.
Yeah.
Study music, and then while I was doing that, I fell in love with research. Started working for a small company in Melbourne back then. They had this role called user researcher, and this was back in 2012, 2013, and just kind of fell into it. And then I just enjoying research more and more, study more in uni, did my honors, and then ended up doing my PhD, working for some of the biggest companies in the world. That some of the wearable technologies that people are wearing nowadays. Been pretty fun. And then I got recruited to join Flight Centre. It's quite an interesting change of turn, I will say, because I was just talking to Kali earlier before this call that democratization in Australia has always been there, right? We have never had a structure where research team stands outside of the science division or inside division. We have always been embedded into whatever processes they're already there. Across Australia, I've never seen teams of 20, 30 researchers. It's very, very rare. You can literally count on one hand. So we have always been focusing on that. And coming from an academics background, where I used to be a lecturer for quite a number of years, democratization, and empowers people, right? Back when I was a lecturer, that's what I do. That's what I did. I want to enable people to be able to think, to be able to do things on their own. And that is what democratization is. Empowering people, giving them the tools, giving them the knowledge to be able to do things that could beneficial for their processes. It could benefit them, could make things easier for them. And
that's awesome.
I think it.
And so I guess just on that note about Australia, everyone seems to be more democratized. And I think I accept that. I mean, we're customers of ours down there that do that, Red Bubble, where they talk a lot about the trio of engineering, design, and product, and then Canva, who are democratizing to a crazy scale. Still have a bunch of researchers, but then obviously democratizing is pretty important. Do you think that the like higher prevalence of democratization and smaller number of research teams, is that about the scale of business in Australia? Is that a reflection of scale of business in Australia, that like we just don't have that many large enough teams, and therefore democratization is actually the norm around the world? Maybe you can't opine on that, but the other would be no, it's actually cultural. Like culturally, we insist on democratized research. What do you think the answer is?
That's an interesting one. I feel like that has always been the culture. Hey, it has always been research as a support division. It has always been research as a pillar that's behind all the other pillars. That's enabling people to do what they need to do. Canva is doing incredible job. Obviously, I think a lot of the teams in Commonwealth Bank, in ANZ, in Westpac, they got pretty big team, but that is not the norm in Australia and New Zealand. I feel like the culture of being supportive, the culture of being there for other people, that has always been sort of the case here in Australia. the competitive nature that I used to experience back when I work in big tech, in a bunch of US-based companies, are not really prevalent here. It's quite different sort of vibe, honestly. And I feel like that's one of the main leading reasons why democratization actually works really well in Australia.
That's awesome. Love that. And so, like, I guess maybe tell us a bit more about Flight Center, and maybe even just a quick primer about what Flight Center does,
Mm.
which is probably relevant in terms of like the types of audiences you're running research with, and maybe even team structure. But um, I guess, yeah, maybe you could give us a bit of context about the business as well.
For sure. So Flightsetter is a multi-billion conglomerate in the travel industry. We own currently maybe roughly 20 to 25% of the Australian and New Zealand travel market. So pretty huge chunk of the travel market here. We operate across, I think 10, 15 different countries, all across the world, from Australia, New Zealand, Canada, South Africa, in the UK, in the US, all across Europe, and all across Asia as well. Flight Center is quite an interesting conglomerate because they have three different pillars: supply, leisure, which
Mm,
where am I at, and then corporate side of things where we don't talk to each other. Um, yeah, exactly. I know it's all separate
mm.
divisions. Nobody knows who's doing what, which is,
Classic
yeah,
story. Yeah.
I know. And yeah, I think that's where a lot of the democratization processes that we did earlier actually came into place, because just you enabling people to talk to each other and knowing, hey, oh, you actually did that as well. Oh, hey, can you share
Mm,
some of those resources with me? Oh, that's an interesting insight. Can we actually apply this here? Totally
mm,
different context, but we're still talking about travel, right? So that's
mm.
yeah, that's where Flight Center is at.
That's awesome. And so, like, obviously, there is a lot of talk online about like people being super hesitant to do democratization.
Mm-hmm.
Some people fear that, it's going to reduce their value. We're not trying to democratize brain surgery. Maybe some people are, but why are we trying to democratize, give away our power in some ways? Or the other side is just we don't want to give up quality, right? Like quality
Mm-hmm.
is really important. The quality inputs is going to determine the quality outputs.
Mm-hmm.
I know that's not your take. Like, why are you so crazy for it?
I I think it's the influence of my leader. So I report directly to our head of design, who sits in the executive table. Louis, shout out to Louis. He is incredible, and also my previous manager, Hans Baroga. These two really are champions of democratization. They know that the way we work here in Australia are quite different from the way other people work all across the world, and that the era of having 20, 30, 40, 50 different researchers in a company might no longer be there. So they set up certain ways, certain guidelines for me to be able to follow and actually implement and actually do things with it. Um, some of the things that we have done, creating those boundaries, putting in a lot of the things that we'll talk about later, right?
Mm,
Research upskilling program, enabling people to be able to get into our repository, whoever they are, as long as they work for Flight Center.
mm,
Enabling people to talk to whoever they want to, as long as they complete our courses that are internal, so that they are of certain level of expertise, so that we know that we don't muddy up our pool of participants. We don't muddy up our pool of insights. Having our regular center of excellence for research, where it connects people from all across the company, whether you are a researcher, whether you are a people who work in operations, you are a designer, you are in finance, whoever you are, you can do that as well. I think that's where we actually found success, where we actually found a lot of support from people in executives, real. Um, yeah.
and so you've got the support from top down. That's awesome. Not everyone gets
Mm-hmm.
that. Like, I think that's really powerful, and that like deep understanding of research and the trade-offs and things like that. Um, Uh, what were the first steps though? Like, what do the initial days actually look like? You're not just going to turn the doors on, everyone go crazy. You've all got a license. Maybe talk about the phases and yeah, how you got into it.
Oh wow, that's an interesting one. The first step was actually honestly knocking on people's door. When I first came into the company, I was tasked with doing a research project, and I was like, well, there must have been something that people have done previously. Why should I start from scratch? But we don't have any sort of records of what's going on.
Mm,
We only
mm,
have records of what the team has done over the past 3 months or 6 months. So I just started knocking doors. I just started asking people, hey, have you guys done this? I went to marketing people. I went to operations people. I went to HR. I went to whoever have done
mm,
things.
mm,
And not just people who are on the operational level, but also at the executive level. Literally going to managing director and asking him, hey, can I have 15 minutes chat with you just to learn a bit more about, hey, what do you think about that? Um,
mm,
and honestly, that's the first step of that, right? People knowing who you are, people knowing what you do, and
mm,
actually started
mm.
connecting those voices. That's the first step of scaling research across all the teams so that we can all speak the same language. We all know the baseline of what we know and what we don't know. And that's when we can start building things together.
That's awesome. And that I'm curious, like you're going out there, you're doing this research, you're doing this research project to understand what exists and how's it all structured and what do you care about, what do people
Mm-hmm.
know about. I'm
Mm-hmm.
curious how much when you started that, you had this idea, you clearly had the idea that, look, research is powerful, we should be doing more of it. I'm assuming
Mm-hmm.
you probably had the idea that it exists in multiple parts of the organization and they find it value. And you probably had the idea that if we connect these things in together, where it's going to be one plus one equals plus one equals 10.
Mm-hmm.
But were you how I have this problem that I have where I'm like I was doing an interview with I was doing some research with a guy called Noam Siegel who's at Zapier these days, great, really smart guy, and um and I asked him a question. It was a bit of a leading question, and he was like, Ned, take your founder hat off. That you, I can see what you're pushing, the angle you're grinding here, but I'm not. It was a pricing related thing. He's like, I'm not going to answer that question. I'll answer this other question instead. I was like, thank you, but I'm curious, how much were you going in there thinking we need to empower everyone, we need to democratize access to the learnings, or you were really just like, I'm a blank slate. I'm just curious. Like, how much was it really like, I'm curious, or no, I'm actually curious.
I I will say it's 50-50, man. It's it's part of, hey, I need this so that I can do my job, but it's also part of, hey, I think
Mm,
there's a function here that we haven't done yet. Because before I came in, we don't have research operations, right? Everybody
mm,
does things differently. We are contracted to all different companies. We have all different tools. We all use different platforms, whatever it is. So the first step for me personally was like, hey, I need to know what I need to know so that I can do my job. But also, hey, what other kind like fancy tools do they actually have? Can I get in
mm,
touch with that? And just started with that. So not necessarily on me wanting to come in and like, hey, I need to do democratization. Not necessarily. It just kind of happens because there are those missing pieces that I feel like as a researcher, you like to connect those different dots, right? And that's what I did. That's why I was like, hey,
that's
there's
awesome.
this bunker right there. There's this bunker right there. What if we pull strings together and can actually connect them?
Yeah, great. And I definitely want to rip into more of like how you've built it and what's involved and all this kind of stuff that you've set up. But and feel free if anyone else has got any specific questions about how we'll set up the program or things that you're trying to answer for yourself, then please throw them in the chat. I guess the big thing I think about before we get into other things and frameworks and whatnot is like,
Mm,
you're two full-time researchers supporting 3,000 employees. That's a lot across across 20 something plus businesses, with three different, I guess, customer segments attached there. Just that's a lot. The maths doesn't make sense to me in a lot of ways. I'm like, just the three different customer segments and that sounds tough. How do you make sure that non-researchers are still producing valuable and high quality? Like, how do you set a quality bar here when you're supporting these people who are answering all these questions no one else is answering?
yeah, definitely. The way we shape our research team is to allow us not to be full-time researchers, but for everybody to be a ops as well, right? At
Mm,
the moment, you
mm,
have one person because Isa, my partner, she has just left for her maternity leave.
mm.
So we are kind of in the market looking for another one at the moment. If you know anybody, hit me up. But the way we shape our team is to make sure that in the first place where we started, we know that we are not just researchers. We are there as educator. We are there as connector. So 40% of our time, 50% of our time is spent on doing research, but 50% of it is actually on enabling people, helping them, going through the interview guide with them, going through those quantitative surveys, going through full story, going through user bill, or get feedback, getting people to know how to talk to people, actually going into stores, because we do have stores all across the
Oh
world.
yeah. Yeah.
Actually helping them prep. Hey, if you want to go do an in-store observation, a fly in the wall observation, this is what you need to do. And actually doing those kind of mini workshops, that's what we do to ensure that we can always have these, valuable high quality research pieces, insights, data that can also be used by other people across the business.
Amazing. In your mind, as you're breaking this up this time, 50% research, 50% with enablement, even within that research part, that I'm guessing that's not only the conducting of the research, it's also the analysis and the share out. So actually the amount of time you're spending on enablement is enormous. Was that something that was obvious to you before you came in, or was that like once you got the ground, you were like, oh, this is how I should spend my time if I'm going to have maximum impact?
It's not really obvious at the start, as a researcher, right? I've always been a researcher for 10 plus years. I've always just want to do research. I wanted people to leave me alone, just being a researcher in my research cave, so that I can spend 2 months studying the data, doing these interviews, launching the surveys, doing this observation, and then just playing around with the data. But I soon realized that, hey, that's not necessarily the impact that could be, maximum impact that I could give. Because doing the research is just one part of it. It's just me and my partner. If we empower other people to be able to do things, then we could have research as a whole working function. It just makes a lot of sense for us to do that, because the era of us having a lot of researchers, I think, has passed. I know not many people want to hear that, but it has always been the case in Australia, right? When I used to work in the US, I work in a research team with just 6 other researchers of just that one research team, where they have a lot of research team as well, just within that one company. But it has never been the case in Australia. You have always been tasked with trying to empower the people, trying to democratize things, even though we have never used the term before.
Awesome. My personal belief is that we were in a lull of research demand, research like title demand, and actually we're going to come out of it with AI is going to bring us to the promised land. But I can talk about that up forever, so I'll stop. But there's another point that you touched on that the idea of the function versus the role, I think, is really interesting. For us, our product organization was founder led up until relatively recently, maybe 6 to 12 months ago, and now it's a true function and it's shared by a lot of people. But now we also have people with the dedicated capital P product management title. We have 2 actually, which is great, and we need more. We are hiring if you are in that capacity. And so I hear you. I think it's a fun way to delineate anyway between the function and the role.
Yes.
But so specifically, you just touched on training programs and things like that. These workshops to help people do fly on the wall observations. What training programs or frameworks in general did you put in place to get teams comfortable speaking with customers? And how have you done it in a way that or how scalable, I guess, have you built it? Maybe anything about sequencing you've got.
Amazing. So the first step for us to do, and shout out to my partner, Isa Lasti. She's incredible. She actually used to come from a PM background. So her mind is a lot more methodological. Like, she knows how to put things into structure. While with me, my brain is a chaotic mess, where I like to pull things apart and try to different ideas. But Isa put together an amazing template that allow people to actually get a view of what needs to happen, what needs to be answered before you can do any research part. She put these research framework templates that we can share later through Kali, and we can go through later because if you guys want to as well, where we actually offer, all right, so if you want to start a research, this is what you need. This is how you could do your analysis. And once you actually get your insight, this is how you could do your workshop on whatever workshop you might need it, where we provide, I think 10 different options or workshops that people can just literally copy and paste onto their Miro board and start doing it. That's the first thing that we prepared. And then we started doing a what we call the research upskilling program that will happen every quarter, where we invite non-researchers into our classes and we actually teach them for a full day on how to do research. Basically, your research 101. From, hey, this is how you will set up your research plan. This is how you will conduct interviews. We give them a use case of, hey, if this is a customer problem, say for instance, customer want to purchase travel, they don't really know how to purchase holiday. And we turn that prompt into something that these participants will go through on, hey, okay, so what methods do we actually need to use? What question do we need to answer? How will we actually apply these methods? What after we get the insight, how do we actually apply this? How do we prioritize things? Who do we need to speak to make this happen? We do that over a period of a day. And the most recent one that we did was back in January, where we had, I think, roughly 40 people who are not from our research team. So we had product managers, we had what do you call it, tech lead. We had people in BA team. We had people all across the operations team who come in and say, hey, we are interested. And they're actually applying that in their day-to-day now. And that just makes it way easier, right? Like the impact of research is not just you doing the research, but also of people applying what you told them how to do.
That's awesome. Just like the appetite for insights, right?
Yes.
And the appetite for the thing I always keep coming back to is every day, everyone in your organization has a bunch of questions about your customer. Only a few of them are you going to answer because they're strategically important for the entire business. What happens to the rest? They're still going to get answered. And now the question is, are they going to use their gut instinct? And how strong is that? Are they going to use the data on what happened? Or are they going to do rogue research? Or are they going to do nothing? And so I think the fact that you're empowering these 40 odd people, that's wild. That's leverage. That's leverage.
100%.
And so you mentioned this research framework template.
Yeah.
Would you mind sharing, I don't know if you're going to bring that up, or I know we're going to be sharing that with folks after this, but yeah, we'd love to maybe you can walk us through it or talk us through it.
For sure. Let me quickly share my screen. Okay. Let me know if you can see this.
Got it.
Awesome. So this is our research template that we share to our stakeholders across the business. It's quite a big one, but it encaptures basically the whole process of doing research, right? From your research planning, picking your research methods, choosing your high might-win statements, understanding high-value problems to solve, and we actually do this risk and urgency metrics, ranking it to a top high-value problems to solve, getting through insight prioritization with impact and effort metrics template, and then your ideation session on what you need to do. And we provide this to our stakeholders in the Miro. Huge shout out to Isa. She's the one who set this up. She's incredible, just amazing person to work with, really. But by doing this, it enables people to understand what we are doing. And I know as a researcher, it's always difficult to let people know what comes in the process of doing research, right? People will be like, oh, you might be just, going to OpenAI and ask, hey, how do I get more participants? How do I get more customers to enjoy this project? But by doing this, you actually get them to see, all right, so to set up your research, just setting it up, you actually need to, putting together your OKR alignment, your objective key result, your hypothesis, your participants. What's your screening questionnaire? What's your method? What are the deliverables? What are the timeline? What is the communication plan? And a lot of those other things. It just enables us to speak in the same language so that these people who are non-researchers actually know what came into place, what came into being before we can even do any kind of research projects. On the other hand, it also enables us to keep a really tight guardrails on the quality of research, because this is what we look into. So once people say, hey, we actually want to do this project, we'll ask them to fill this out. And either Isa or myself will actually sit down with them on an hour session or hour and a half session, actually go through these details and check whether, hey, oh, this make any sense? Or maybe that's a leading question. You can frame it this way instead.
Mm. That's phenomenal. First of all, I love anyone doing workshops where you've got these materials are able to consume, and after the fact, it's like we work with a bunch of vendors that do something similar. I'm like, oh, we should be doing more of this ourselves as we help, people, our customers think about democratization. Um, so the format is great. I love how in depth you're going with these folks to help them figure out the right method and making sure they're not
Yeah.
leading and all this kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
they're this must be embedding in their heads, right? This is helping them. They've got the content and the context. They've got the right content as they're going through and actually about to go and answer some question they're trying to answer.
Yeah.
This is a lot, though. You talk about an hour and a half for each of these individuals going through this. One, how do you think about the need for refreshing? Like, someone comes through this once, is that kind of sufficient? Or actually, every time they've got some study, they're going to come back through? And then, how much can they do on their own? Or is there any more they could do on their own? Does every project need to come through a system like this, do you think? And I think I got something similar from Waco as well. Um, uh, yeah, which I'll come back to, but it's a similar sort of sentiment.
Yeah. So this is actually something that everybody across the business, whether you are a researcher like myself or Isa, or designers in our team where we have like 20 something UX designers, or anybody in the business need to go through when they start a project. It takes them a little bit in the beginning, but once they actually get used to it, they actually know what to fill out. They actually understand the criteria that we need to fill out. And it actually makes it way easier. The first session that we ever run was hour and a half. And nowadays, it maybe took us at 20 minutes, 15, 20 minutes to get through this with a product manager. I think one of the real example will be a project that I did with one product manager. She was just starting at Flight Center Travel Group. She's still trying to get the grasp. And then I ran this through with her. Took us hour and a half. And then just yesterday, she was able to fill it out herself. And it only took her like 20 minutes. And I don't even need to be there. So the next meeting that I'll set up with her is just me going through, all right, oh, so what's your plan? What do you actually want to find out? Or what's your OKR? What's your ROI? And, just running through some of those things.
Yeah, I love this. It's, in our job as building great question, as research platforms set up to democratize research at scale, we think so much about, all right, well, I can get them to answer this question or that question, and that will help them find the right method, and I can validate that they're not asking, leading questions and all that kind of stuff. But actually, this process you talk about is not too dissimilar to our product management process, where look, we've got a PRD template, effectively, a product requirements doc template, and people fill that in, and then in our best projects, we then do a kickoff, and we have all the stakeholders there, and we talk through and make sure that the solutions and the problems are rightly framed, and the measurements and goals and the stakeholders and the data that goes and contributes to that. And the first time someone goes through it, they are not good at it. And in fact, it's democratized in a lot of ways because we've got customer success people writing product requirements docs, and salespeople for prospective customers, and support looking to improve systems and ops. So I love it. You're making me rethink. I don't necessarily complete rethink, but definitely think more about how might we bring some of these sort of things into the system.
Yeah, definitely. It's great. But being able to empower these people means that you're not just empowering them, but also keeping a certain level of standard that you wanted. And having these same processes over and over. And then you can then review it every 3 months, every 6 months, or during your yearly planning to see what works and what doesn't. It's great. I'm loving it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Love that. And yeah, we'll share this out with everyone after the fact, so you'll get a copy of this. Is there any difference in the training or the comms or the strategies in general of research, even maybe the methodologies or the audiences between different teams? Maybe it's the different, stakeholders. Talk about supply versus corporate versus consumer, but also designers, PMs, marketers. Yeah, how do you think about that?
Yeah, definitely. So, Flight Center Travel Group is a huge conglomerate on travel, right? Where we serve people who are from your very, very budget student travel, all the way to people who are paying $150,000 for a 30 days trip. Um, Different ways of serving things came into considerations. Whenever there are huge chances of failure, if any sort of failures could lead to a really higher risk to the business, that's where people like me or like Isa will come in to help either guide or actually be there to do the research. In any other case, we will try to ensure that at the very least, these people already have the skills to be able to do so. But even before they do any kind of things, we will actually be there to observe them. At the very least, we'll be there for the first few sessions so that we know that yes, they have been through this in the classroom, but they know how to do it. If you are speaking to one of the clients that we spoke to was one of the research person in Australia. Obviously, we can't send people who are not trained to go talk to them because they could potentially ask leading questions, one, or they could ask questions that could lead to rage or anger in these people, and it wouldn't be good to get in their bedside, right? So getting that sort of standard, that sort of framework, so that we know if it's a high risk pieces, researchers, full-time researchers need to be there, or at the very least be in the guidance sort of role, a team lead or a coaching sort of role. If it's a medium scale risk, that's fine. We could be there just as a coach. If it's a low risk one, we'll just be there as a guide.
Mm, that's awesome. I think that's a great framework. I was thinking about it in regards to finance. I was like, hey, we have an expense management policy where we say how much you can spend on a
Mm,
laptop or on a lunch or something like that. But then there's someone that checks that on the back end, right? They're like,
exactly.
is this policy being implemented? The finance person will review it and be like,
Mhm,
hey, call someone out. Or you might have software that checks it,
mhm,
right? It says this
mhm.
corporate card can't be spent at, I don't know, a liquor shop or a bar or something, and this is for
Yes.
lunch, not booze. Um, but we don't necessarily have that in research, right? Like in person, more challenging. Definitely, I think where you've got a repository, we can do quality checks to let you know
Mm,
and give a letter score, some foreshadowing if you're a great question customer. But yeah, how do you think about that? Or you're like, you know what, we put everything up front, we train, we guide, but at some point we've got to let someone else into the world. And we're certainly not doing the same thing for products, right? Like we're not
right.
saying product requirement doc and we're checking the quality of a product requirement doc. We also want to check the output of the decision
Yes.
of the build. But yeah, how do you think about that?
Yeah, it's we always speak about research democratization as like this boogeyman in the room, right? But people have been doing that. They just don't call it research democratization. Like what you're saying in finance, people have been doing that. In operations, people have been doing that, and they've been doing it for a very long time. Even in your in great question in your management you know organization tree, right? Certain decisions you allow people to be able to do that before it hits certain point where they had to let you know before they can do certain
Mm,
things.
mm,
That
mm,
is
mm.
democratization, right?
Yes, yes.
It's just different concepts, different wordings, but people have been doing that in terms of work. That's what we do as well, right? I am allowed certain things to do by my manager if it's impacting
Mm,
a
mm.
$1 million to $5 million, then I need to speak to him so that I don't fuck things up. But if it's not, it should be all right for me to be able to just um, take the executive decision and be like, hey, this is what we need to do.
Awesome. Love that. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Uh, so we've got some questions coming in. Keep the questions coming. Um, I'm going to switch gears a little bit to talk a little about ROI and tooling, and then we're going to come back at the end to cover all these additional questions. Great one from Jenna, thank you, and one from iPhone 84. And there's a bunch of bunch of great ones in here. So we'll get to that. Oh, and Jadine.
Mhm.
Um, cool. So, like, why were you looking to bring a tool like Great Question to the mix, and like, what impact did it have? And actually, the question I've got before that, because I was just thinking about this. I remember our first conversation, which I don't know how long ago that was, 6 months. How did you even find it? Or did I find you?
So I think I posted on the Research Ops Slack channel.
Oh, that's I remember that. Yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
I was like, hey, we are currently using user testing, but it's no longer enough for us to be able to scale up our operations, while still maintaining within our budget. What are the other great
Mm,
options out there? I think
mm.
it was either you or somebody else reached out to me on email, and I think it was you, wasn't it? Um,
Probably me.
yeah,
Yep.
just started chatting there, and then emails, and yeah, just meeting up.
Evals. Yep. Awesome. Sounds like a man that's spending a lot of time in AI. And so like, yeah, what were you looking to do? Like, what led you to actually even to that point of coming in? All right, we need to start looking at potentially bringing in a tool.
Yeah, definitely. So, prior to me coming in, we didn't really have a set of eyes that actually pay attention to what we have. We had one of our design managers taking charge of user testing back then. So before user testing, we used to use Askable. But Askable back then didn't really have a lot of unmoderated functions. And that's why they moved to user testing. With user testing, it enables them to do a lot of those moderated and unmoderated. But the thing is that the platform is just not scalable enough for us to be able to do things that we wanted. When I came in, I wanted to do a customer research program where we start talking to our real customers instead of relying on panels that might not actually be our customers, right? We want to enable people to be able to log in to their account and launch a project if they wanted to. We want to enable everybody to come in and search for insight. We want to enable people to not have to connect to different databases so that we just have a list of participants that we needed. Having ability to set up wallets, ability for me to be able to have an oversight of what's going on, what everybody has spent. Either we can spend less, either we can spend more. Um, and I think that's the reasons why I end up going with Great Question, and the impact has been pretty significant. Um, Previously, we only had our team, which is the design department, 20 odd something people who use user testing. Now we have nearly 100 something people. So people who are outside of the team, outside the design division, who actually come into Great Question, have a look at the insight that we have a look at list of participants that we have, play around with the AI. And I feel like it's growing more and more. I think last time I checked, we had like 136 people. And our design division is only 23, 24 people. So 100
Mm.
plus people who are not in design, who don't talk to participants, not talk to customers as much, actually come into the platform and having a look, being curious. And it's great.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And previously, I'm guessing that wasn't really a possibility. Like that couldn't have happened.
Yeah. So previously we didn't really have, I think we had an enterprise account with user testing, but we only had like 5 seats,
Mm.
which is not enough for us to be able to do things. When I came in, I think we did like 40 projects per year, so like 10 projects every quarter. And now I think we are doing triple the amount. And having user testing back then means that we wouldn't be able to scale that much, because we hit a very strict credits limit. Um,
Mm.
and we had to stop doing tests, I think last year for 6 months because we just ran out of credits.
Mm.
But now with user test, with Great Question, we were able to do all of that, while still staying below budget.
Wow, that is wild. Like tripling the number of studies, just to recap, this is mostly for
Yep.
me, everyone. I apologize, but you're blowing my mind, Will. I'm like, all right, triple the number of studies. That's
Yep.
awesome. And went from this sort of like 20-ish people on the design team to like 136 something odd people, or from two researchers to 136 people being able to run research on the platform.
Yep.
Um, Wild. Maybe you can talk more about like other tools you're using, or maybe you're even still using some of them. Like I don't know if there's much any tool consolidation or any other like financial impact on in terms of ROI.
Yeah, for sure. I think part of my OKR, so objective and key results. So at Flights and Travel Group, that's what we use to measure the work that we have, either in quarterly, and then half yearly, and then annually, and it leads back to the executive. So my OKR is part of my boss's OKR as well. Back then, we spent so much money on multiple platforms and multiple contracts to external vendors. So, for instance, Flight Center brand, which is one of our brand, had to use external vendors like Askable, or actually contracted out their research projects to be able to run a simple A/B testing. They had to contact, and spend 50 grand so that people can test different wordings in their marketing promotional materials. And that adds up. Before, we didn't have any idea on what's going on. So during that first meeting that I spoke about earlier, I actually asked them, hey, so what kind of tools you guys have? How much do you actually spend on that? I know it's quite sensitive, but you got to let me know. So, maybe you can find something about it, right? And we just started talking about that. I think as a group, we spent maybe $500,000 within leisure division, or even more than that, just to do research. And that's quite a lot when you look at it from a group level, but from a certain smaller business level, it might not seem much. But I was able to gather that and actually present that to my boss and be like, hey, we actually spend this much money as a group. If we can consolidate all these tools and spend way less, I think it'll be great, because it's not just us spending less money, which is, huge ROI for us, right? But also us actually being able to look into what other people are doing, what are other people wanting to do, what other people have done in the past, and start talking in one place across different businesses.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Love that. And so I'm hearing like there was definitely some tool consolidation there, and also it sounds like some pretty significant cost saving as well.
Yeah, huge. Yeah, I think we save $400,000 a year just by consolidating the tools they're scattered all across the different teams at different businesses.
That's wild. That's wild. That's a lot of money. Cool. And so I think we've kind of covered a lot of it. I think let's dive into the questions. There were so many good questions that came through. Dana Bishop, how do you measure the business value and impact of your democratization efforts? So we talked a little bit about the ROI modeling, which kind of, I guess, makes sense. But is there any other, like, anything else tighter than that around related to your OKR alignment, or anything else you wanted to share?
For sure. I think the one thing that could be very, very obvious to a lot of people, right, is how much money do you actually spend on external contractor to be able to do your research process for you, versus how much money you will be spending if you are doing it yourself. By by measuring that is your ROI. If you spend $150,000 to run a 6 months research project, by contracting it to an agency, versus you assigning one person who already work in your team with access to a tool that's already available anyway, that is a huge ROI. And that's one of the things that you could actually showcase to the business of, hey, we don't need to pay $150,000. Give me 10 grand. We can run this research basically same or better quality. And we are keeping all this knowledge and training in-house, so that you're not actually putting all your knowledge out there. It's just you and your business upskilling people, and enabling people to do what they wanted to do.
Yeah, that's great. So like not only tool savings, cost savings, but then also external vendor savings for not having to do external research. We can do it internally. And now they maybe don't see the value necessarily, or it's harder to measure the value necessarily of, look, with 3x the number of projects, and we've increased the number of people doing it. But is there ever any question or a sense of impact on the bottom line that's separate to these sort of things? Like, e.g., because we learned this insight, this is where it always gets tenuous, right? This person learned this insight by going in the store, and therefore they changed the advertising, or they pulled some lever and money started falling out. Does it ever get to that, or they generally understand the value of research, and so that question isn't there, but the idea of doing more is still valuable? Like, how do you think about that?
Yeah. I think when we first started as a team, there was that kind of question, right? Like, oh, hey, can you justify why you are here? If people are working in finance, you know why they are there, right? Because they are there to be a finance controller. They are there to manage your money. One of the biggest project that we work on was to change a lift to luxury. So one of the businesses was playing in more premium travel kind of role, and they wanted to move to luxury. They aren't entirely sure what they wanted to do. They were about to spend a lot of money on contracting agencies to help them to be able to do that. My previous manager sneakily reached out to me and be like, hey, Will, we actually got this opportunity. They want to spend 6 figures on external agency to tell them how to do things. What about you take this 2 months, 3 months, and actually do this project, deliver it to them before they contract to this, before they even started this chat with this external agency, and we actually give them, hey, this is the pathways that we need to do based on research, based on insight. And yeah, that's what we did, and since then on, it has like the question of the value has never been brought.
That's great. All right, we've got a lightning round. We've got 10 minutes to go. We're going to try and get through. I've got 5 questions. We're not going to get through them all, but any questions we don't get through, I'll follow up Will offline, and we'll send them out with the notes. But someone asked, I'm having a hard time convincing execs that specialist researchers should be the one that own the high risk projects instead of non-researchers, which you were talking about. I've shared the risk framework, but it's just not landing. Any advice?
Don't share the risk framework. Run them through that. If you just show them what it looks like, if you just spoke to them, they'll be like, well, really though, do you actually need that kind of skills? Actually getting them to run through that, actually get running and testing it out with them, bring them to your sessions, get them through that. Hey, have you ever been in one of those interview sessions? Come with me. Have you actually been to stores? Do you actually know what people feel when they use our products? And bring them there and show them what it feels like. And that actually changes their mind. In our presentation, right? Back then, we used to present a lot of words, a lot of, hey, this is what we think it feels like. Nowadays, with Great Question, we just clip a lot of those different things and show it to them. So we had an hour session or presentation with our stakeholders. Half of it are basically us playing videos of these customers, these travelers saying, yeah, we don't really like your product because of this. Once they actually hear it from these people, they'll be like, oh shit, yes, we actually need to
I
change.
know. It's so wild how visceral that gets and what that does. Yeah, even when I watch someone do something, like watch them go through a prototype test, before they even click the buttons, I suddenly see it through their eyes and go, "Oh no, they're about to get stuck because this sucks. I gotta fix it."
Yes.
It's just like that rubber ducky kind of research. Cool, great, thank you. Jenna Hammer asks, "How do you handle situations where a non-researcher's findings contradict those from a researcher?" Tough.
Oh, yeah, that's a fun one.
Fight.
uh, Whenever that kind of situation happen, we will actually pull out our workshop. So one of our workshop sessions actually dive into why those things happen. So we compare and contrast. All right, so what did you do to find this? What are the questions that you ask? What are the sort of body languages that you do? But you don't come to them from a point of view that says that they are wrong. We learn things differently. I think the notion that researchers are objective are wrong. From my point of view, doing research plenty of years with a PhD in anthropology, people are subjective. You read things, you see things from your point of view. And what makes researchers good is because you are exposed to different knowledge gaps, you're exposed to different people, you talk to different people, and you have that background in your mind, and that's why you can make those decisions, right? For some of these people, they might not actually have that knowledge, they might not actually have that expertise, they might not have actually been exposed to people, and that's why they have different perceptions of what's going on. But be open to that, talk to them, get them through a session, get them to run you through what's going on, and that's where you can learn together, right?
Yep, love that. And I'm going to clip this of you saying that even researchers can be biased, and I'll put that up on LinkedIn tomorrow. You can keep an eye out for that. Um, uh, great, but I do love the taking the Socratic method to it. That hey, look, what do you know that I don't know? I love those
Exactly.
conversations. Like, why are we disagreeing? It's funneling that you believe something that I don't know, that I don't.
Mm,
Help me understand that.
yeah.
And then Jadine asks, in a democratized model, are non-researchers accountable for the end-to-end process? Aside from like the kind of the guidance and coaching you do at the front, like do you
Mm,
lean on research ops to tackle certain parts of that? Like, which I think is you, right? It's like there's really
yeah.
two researchers that also do
Yeah.
ops and enablement. Are you
Yeah.
doing any part, which is really, are you doing any part of the recruiting or screening or incentive management, or is that really just DIY? By great
Ah,
question.
I actually outsourced that to this platform called Great Question. I'm not sure if you have heard of it before.
Love
Um,
that. Will with the layup. You're doing my job for me. So I'll clip that as well.
but for real, so we train people to be able to do things end to end, but we are there to guide them, right? Um, like what we have discussed earlier, it depends on the risk of the research that we want to do. If it's a really high risk one, we need to be there. If it's
Mm,
a low medium risk, we will be there as guides. But as guides, you need to be there to provide them with coaching of, hey, this is, the people that you need to speak to. They will go out, create those screener questions by themselves, creating the targeting demographics that they want to find. But as research operations, you are there to always pay attention to what's going on. Before they launch things, you need to be able to review things and see, oh, is it the right one? Are they actually paying people the right amount of money? Are they actually targeting
mm,
people in Australia instead of people in
mm,
somewhere in Europe,
mm.
right? So instead of you doing a lot of this hard work, democratization allow us to be able to pull back, do those big research projects that are extremely impactful with a lot of
Mm,
dollar values
mm,
attached to it,
mm.
and allow people to be able to do a lot of these other things that could be tedious for you to do.
Great, love that. And we're running out of time. We've got 4 minutes left, and I want to yeah, Judy replies with great question as well. Thank you. And even then, we've had some folks asking for help in parts of the process. And
Mm,
this is actually kind of common. We see this in a few places. Often it happens where people are quite senior and they're very busy, and they're like, I
mm,
just need to get this done. Do I really need to go and log in and do that? And Jadine, I'd love to
mm.
hear if this is maybe somewhat of what's happening here, right? Is people that are maybe capable of doing it, but are just super slammed. Feel free to unmute. I'd love to hear it.
Yes, that's exactly it. Is a lot of folks that just get really busy, that are really keen and capable and have the skills to conduct the
Mm,
research, but they just have limited time. So sometimes they're
mm,
asking like, "Hey, can somebody just go in there and help me recruit and get this all set up, and I can just jump in to do the interviews and I'll do the
Mm,
synthesis after."
mm,
So we're trying to
mm.
like strike a good balance and enabling folks in the right way.
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah, Will, are you seeing
that is.
something similar, or how are you tackling that?
Yeah. So in our prioritization metric, so we a few things that are happening, right? Every single time, any sort of people have any kind of research request, whether it's getting asked to do their work or them wanting to launch things, they could file in a form called research request. Once it hits our mailbox, we actually ask them, hey, what sort of role do you want us to be in? Do you want us to do the research? Or are you happy with you running the research and us just being a coach? Are you happy with us setting up things for you? So in that form of ours, they already fill that in, and we already know what they wanted from that. If they already been through the workshop, if they've been through the upskilling program, then that's fine. Then we'll just set up things for them, and they can then do everything themselves. Um, they already connected their Outlook with Great Question anyway. So once we actually set those up, they're already there. They are happy to run things by themselves.
Yeah. I think, Jadine, I love it. It's great hearing that context that this is a pain
Mm,
point and like a source of friction, because I think for us, we think about where we can leverage AI to go and streamline these things. And I think this is a great area. It's like, how can I make it
mm,
just as easy as them submitting a request to you as through Great Question, but still
mm,
be able to put a high quality output? And the AI is going to facilitate all this, and we're making good strides there.
mm,
So yeah, more fodder for the use cases. Hey, that's us. We've got time. We've got 2 minutes left. That's us. I just want to say a massive thank you, Dr. Will Yanko, for coming in here and sharing this. I'm furiously typing notes. Carly's in the background blowing up, super excited. I hope everyone else found it valuable. I certainly did. And really appreciate not only sharing the lessons learned in a sort of pragmatic and humble way for what you're achieving, but also being willing to share the framework, which we'll share afterwards. So yeah, thank you. Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Mate, thanks for having me. It's been great. It's been a blast.